Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
Welcome, everybody. Glad you could join me again. And again, I have one of my very, very favorite authors on. I have Charles Pellegrino with me today, and we're going to be talking about his book, Unearthing Atlantis. You know that's one of my favorite topics. And to be perfectly honest with you, he's taken the mystery out of it, and I think found the actual site. This is from the back of the book. In the year 347 BC, Plato wrote of a miraculous island with hot and cold flowing waters, terraced, multi-storied buildings, and the fairest of all plains. For thousands of years, the legend of the mysterious vanquished continent of Atlantis has captivated writers, poets, authors, artists, philosophers, and dreams. But now Atlantis has been found. And the truth about its vibrant life and horrific destruction is even more remarkable than the myth. Based on artifacts and evidence in an ancient buried Minoan city, noted scientist and New York Times-bestselling author Charles Pellegrino reanimates the astonishing lost civilization and recreates what explosive power and apocalyptic cataclysm that destroyed this remarkable island metropolis. It's a brilliant synthesis of history, literary material, archaeological and geological detective work. Here is both the story of the astounding discovery that transformed fairy tale into fact and a breathtaking vision of Atlantis reborn. It's the work he's done is amazing. The detective work he's done is phenomenal, and even more so. I'm hard to convince of anything, but he's got me. Unless he can actually come, I can't imagine anybody could document anything as thoroughly as he has that is a convincing reality, and just what he discovered with his explorations is just phenomenal. So I want to bring him on. Come on, Mouse. Hey, Charlie.
Hello.
What drove you to Atlantis? I mean, you have amazing topics that you've gone into, but usually there's been something that just grabbed at you that wouldn't let go. What was it about Atlantis that grabbed a hold of you?
It's a long chain of accidents, actually. So Brookhaven, I'm working on these robots that we were designing to get under the ice of one of Jupiter's moons, Europa. So it's an accident that happened on the way to Jupiter in a way. So then 1985, I sailed with Bob Ballard to these hydrothermal vents and working with his prototypes of the robots that would eventually be miniaturized and sent to Europa. And had to see what the state of robotics was at that time in 1985. So sailed with that crew right after the Titanic had been discovered, and Ballard just, all the crowding of all the media and everything, he pulled a bunch of volcanologists together and went out to the hydrothermal vents, which was where I really wanted to explore because that's a prototype of what we hope we may find deep under the ice of Europa, where there's all sorts of life gathered around those vents.
Yeah.
So we were out at the East Pacific Rise. I talked way too much about space for all these oceanographers. But then again, they were talking a lot of, he had just an absolutely brilliant crew with him. Haraldur Sigurdsson was one of the people who was working at the island of Santorini. And meanwhile, I had been shown pictures of the Titanic, and there was a whole sort of interesting physics there. And the volcanologist and the people who were working Pompeii and Herculaneum and Santorini, the island of Thera, they were saying, well, if you think the Titanic wreckage down there is interesting, that's nothing. You got to go to Thera. You got to go to Egypt. You got to go look at what we've been looking at. And went and have never, I keep returning to the island. I'm like one of those old turtles that keeps returning to the same place. But that's how it all started. It was another interesting thing happening on the way to Jupiter's moons. And absolutely not just interesting, but an absolutely fascinating thing. The 17th century BC eruption of Thera, the explosion of this island, was as big as Pompeii was. Imagine multiplying that by 1,000 times.
Wow.
It was well, at that time, the entire world nuclear arsenal was over 50,000 atomic bombs. Imagine an entire world war confined within one island, all happening at once.
Well, short of the radiation, how powerful
Right.
was it?
Minus the radiation, it created a global nuclear winter without the radiation.
Okay.
There are records as far away as China of the crops failing, of winter not coming in, of winter instead of summer coming, and just famine. It was something recorded all over the world. Trees in California recorded the years without the summer. And there are these freeze scars in these California bristlecone trees, some of the oldest living organisms on Earth. And you go into their rings and you see the effects of this eruption after the death cloud swept all the way around the world from the Mediterranean to California. The dust is found in Egypt, in the Nile River. It's found in the North Pole. It's found in the Greenland ice cap. It's found in the southern hemisphere, in the South Polar ice.
Is it one of the largest explosions that we've ever had?
Oh, there have been larger. It's about 160,000 to 165,000, the force of the asteroid that finished the dinosaurs.
Okay,
So
that's
to be, even a significant part of 1% of that, it's big. It is the biggest volcanic explosion that humans have ever seen.
well, I think one of the things that fascinated me was, we've all heard the stories about how advanced Atlantis was and the myths of everything, and yet when you've the archaeological stuff that you've done found that they had flushing toilets and hot and cold running water. You found the evidence of it. It's not like
that's the city that Spirit of Marinados found, which is only a tiny fraction of Minoan civilization. But on the island of Santorini, and it's now all open to the public, he and his family worked on that decades, and the excavation is still ongoing. And you see these houses where there's a flush toilet in one of them on the second floor. The construction, the way the wood was arranged, it took forever, for example, for Japan to come up and replicate that same technology that made buildings earthquake resistant in an earthquake zone. The technology, we still haven't found where the aqueducts were that were feeding water onto these upper floors. Shipping technology, they were called the keftiu by Egypt. They were the only other civilization that the Egyptians considered civilized like themselves.
Well, even the
And
Egyptians have records of the explosion.
yes, and there are records. Simca Jacobovici, he found stela and that had been kind of ignored in the basement of the Cairo Museum years ago, and it describes the shaking of the earth, the clouds, the death of people. It describes the basically some of the plagues of Israel, the plagues of Egypt that we read about in the book of Exodus. It
And
independently describes them, as do the Ipuwer lamentation papyri in Egypt from the same time of the 18th dynasty.
it's so
So,
strange that nobody else had put it together. I mean, of course, everybody's been looking outside the Pillars of Hercules, and
yeah,
that's not where it was. So, um, it just to me, it was like this makes perfect sense. This also makes perfect sense, and it fit into Exodus with the Pharaoh letting go of
right.
the
And
Hebrews, and
also, there was a port within the Mediterranean. I forget offhand which island, but it was a major trading port that was also known as the Pillar of Hercules. So you had two places. You had one in the far western Mediterranean that was called the Pillar of Hercules, and of course the Atlas Mountains in Africa. And
yeah.
uh, Plato probably, when he wrote it, he was probably referring to the Pillars of Hercules in the far western Mediterranean, out the exit to the Atlantic Ocean. Uh, Enlarged the continent, made it much larger for his tale, his cautionary tale about a civilization that you grow too great and you think yourself to have conquered nature and even the gods, and you get put down. You
Well,
push too hard, and something's going to push back. That was the
when
whole point of his tale.
but when Plato got the story, it was already in antiquity. I mean, it
Yes, it was
wasn't just
already a story with the priest of Egypt,
yeah, the
which he
Solon.
credits with the story. He says there have been many destructions of civilization, many falls, many floods, and the Egyptians are telling his ancestor Solon, you know of only one, but there have been many, and here is one of the ones you don't know. And it seems to what Plato described, to actually describe the red, the black, and the white stones that the buildings were made from, which we find in the
Yeah.
Minoan civilization, of which the island of Santorini is only one part of that very large, very wealthy civilization in the 18th dynasty.
What kind of research is ongoing? Because certainly they haven't discovered everything there is to discover there.
Oh, much is ongoing. The excavation is being expanded. There are excavations on the island. They find things when they make road cuts, for instance, a stone with very, very delicate carvings. Uh, you need a microscope to see all the muscle structure. And there have also been found several quartz, broken, preserved sections of what really look like lenses. And I was always wondering, you find some of these Roman coins from the first century and Greek coins, first century BC, AD on into the third century. And they could only have been made if you had a water lens or probably crystal, and the Romans were molding glass by then, glass lenses, in order for the cutter, the person who was cutting the dies, to be cutting these things where you have muscle structure, facial expression on something only this big. So that kind of technology probably goes back to the 17th century BC. And you can actually watch as civilization started to come apart toward the end of the Roman Empire and leading up to the 535 AD disaster, which was another volcanic event of some sort, that we had years without summer. Civilizations began falling everywhere from South America to Rome, and you can actually watch as Rome starts to fall apart over nearly a 200-year period. You can watch in the coinage how the coinage minting technology and even the die cutting technology starts to fade away. You don't have the naturalistic portraiture. You end up with what look like stick figures. Whoever had been using magnifying devices, they weren't in use anymore. By the time you get to, I mean, there are periods where they're in the city of Rome itself, where there are restaurant pub type places in the Middle Ages where they find racks of basically in marble toilet seats, and the inhabitants of Rome at that time are using them as windows to pubs. I mean, revisionist historians try to say these days, oh no, there really wasn't a dark age, and there was the Holy Roman Empire, which was neither Roman nor holy, definitely not holy, and not an empire anymore. But anyway, the Dark Age was really dark. People were troglodytes roaming around what was left of the city of Rome, looking at the rows of toilets, wondering, I wonder what those were for.
Yeah, no, that I think what got me too was that they had some knowledge that something was coming, and I loved it because you tied it into a woman who was going down with the Titanic, and she dusted her stuff and she folded stuff and she put it away, and she was very careful
Edith
about
Russell, yeah.
and it seems the same, that there have been no bodies discovered, no teeth, no nothing, so that where did the population go?
Well, they evacuated, and on one side of a fragment of what was once there was a mining operation, and they did find bodies. So that was miles away from where Akrotiri is. So the volcano probably put through one town where there's now just a big crater lake in the middle of it. You probably had a pyroclastic flow that went through one town, maybe months before the final eruption sequence, and the people said, this doesn't bode well for the future. In the section that's being excavated now, Akrotiri, the people took every thread of gold or silver, anything of real value. They took it and they went away. So they evacuated. But with this kind of eruption that it was coming, that was developing, it was more than anyone could have anticipated.
Well, how could you get
Turkey,
far in that?
Turkey, in the channeled scab lands,
Yeah.
there are these two peninsulas that jut out in Turkey that would have acted like the prongs of a giant tuning fork when the tsunami from the eruption arrived. And it built these prongs, these two peninsulas would have built it up. And the channeled scab lands in Turkey, we estimated that to get that far inland, when the wave reached the shore, it would have had to be 800 feet high. So that's more than halfway up the Empire State Building.
So
to move rocks that far and to create these channeled scab lands. Now, that was probably the highest that the wave got. depending on the shape of the shore, you could have been hit by a tsunami that was 40 feet tall, 60 feet tall. To get an idea what that was, where the water just keeps coming in like a tide and just rising and rising, you can get an idea of that if you go to March 2011 and you look at the video of what happened in the Sendai province of Japan.
Yeah. Well,
And that's what probably happened in Egypt.
I mean, you look at the population, and if it wasn't there, but you really couldn't get far enough away from it so that it wiped the culture out.
Not quite wipe them out. And here's another thing that resonates with Plato, is that he said some fragments of the culture survived and rebuilt. And we even see that on the Minoan Islands around there. We see it on Crete, that people came back, but they were under new rule. They were under the rule of the Northern Greeks, who in some of the frescoes you see Minoan architecture, but the people are wearing these Northern Greek kilts. You see that reflected also in the tomb of Rekhmir, who was one of the advisors to Queen Hatshepsut of Egypt. Now, this would have been a couple of decades later, but you see them bringing Minoan gifts and Minoan pottery on a wall painting, but they're wearing Northern Greek kilts.
Yeah, I love that because they went in and they repainted the kilts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that they were more Minoan.
The Egyptians were acknowledging a changeover of government. So the Minoan civilization was destroyed. It left a vacuum for the Greeks to move in. They preserved a lot of the Minoan technology, a lot of the culture, the language changed, but in a way lived on. And so civilization was able to recover and continue after that.
Well,
it took time, but it recovered.
In one place, I know you spoke about how even in some of the archaeological digs now, if there's a city beneath the city.
Yeah, 2016 we confirmed that, and it was one of the first explorations that was done with drones. The area we were looking at is called the White Island, and the rock itself, it's just very loose volcanic debris. You can't attach yourself to the top and climb down to look at the layer where the lower civilization was. You couldn't, I mean, it's too dangerous. So the new drone technology was coming along, and that's what we went. And we did see a few areas where you could see the old soil surface, and you could see where there were traces of what had been walls. And there were also, in the excavation, when they were drilling down to create holes to set up foundations for the beams to hold a roof over the excavation, they found traces of a earlier layer of civilization going down hundreds, perhaps 1,000 years or so to a prior eruption. And when we really confirmed this in 2010, I came home, 2016, I came home very sad. My daughter was asking, well, what's wrong? And I said, there was this other civilization, and there were traces of that on the White Island, and also traces of it on Therasia, which is another fragment of the island. And it looks like what happened was something on the range of a Pompeii level explosion. So, but even at 1/1000th of a Thera eruption, the 1628 to 1640 BC eruption, on just that island, if it were a Vesuvius level eruption, there would likely have been no survivors. And so I just felt very sad thinking about a civilization that had been there that was gone, and now, even if, hundreds or thousands of years later, no one even remembered their names. No one remembered what they were called. So, that it did weigh on me a bit that was what we were seeing.
Yeah, and you wonder if that civilization was more advanced.
Yeah, we don't have enough traces to tell what their level of technology was. They were probably like the Minoans on other islands. Uh, we know almost nothing about them, who they were. We just see these traces, and we see the layer of the agricultural soil that was there, the olive gardens, and all we know is that they're gone without trace.
What was also fascinating to me was that their bull culture, for the most part, the story of the Minoans is fantasy to a great extent, but they did have the bull riding and the bull worship and
Yes,
everything,
yes.
and but that also transcends into kind of explaining to me slightly about the bull stuff in Egypt and the big huge
Yes.
sarcophaguses for bulls that they have in Egypt, so that there must have been a sharing of some sort of that
Oh, yes, there
philosophy.
was. There's even a city in Egypt, in Avaris, Egypt, that it has all the Minoan paintings, the miniature frescoes, and everything. It's Minoan culture. There is no wall around that city. Their power was economic and trade. And the Egyptians, they're the Keftiu that the Egyptians welcomed in. So the they would have had in common. I don't think they probably both worship the bull at the same time because it's a very powerful animal. And
Yeah,
I imagine that's a reason the Egyptians said, oh, they're a lot like us. They worship the same things. And the golden calf and all that, they made golden bulls in Egypt. They had bulls imprinted on gold in the Minoan world. So and all the way back. And in fact, the Greeks carried that through also. On some of their earliest coinage, you see the bull bowing down. In their earliest, they had a composite of gold and silver. And you even see this on the coins of Augustus Caesar, on the reverse of those coins, the same bull tradition carrying through that you see imprinted in Egypt, 1600, 1700 years earlier, that you see in Egypt and in the Minoan world, the traditions carried on through, all the way up to the point of where you still had bullfights going on, and you know, uh, which is a tough thing to watch. I attended a bullfight once, and just once, a
yeah.
professor said, "No, you need to see this. It's a religious thing." I like the way Arthur Clarke dealt with the bullfighting in his novel Childhood's End, where the aliens that are watching over the earth, they decide this is not good, and they suddenly, thousands of startled screams go out in a bull arena because they made everyone in that arena feel exactly what the bull felt.
Oh,
And that was the end of bullfighting.
is there any connection to then the fact that in India the cows, the bulls are holy?
We don't know, you know, and I don't know. Certainly, I just don't know. But that's something someone out there may want to look into that. The best place to be in science is when you find didn't think of that. I don't know. You find some weird organism that's living near a hydrothermal vent. What on earth is that? I don't know. That's how we find, oh my, there's whole life forms that live on hydrogen and hydrogen sulfide instead of sunlight, and there's a whole food chain based on it. Next up, Europa, right?
Is Europa still on the calendar, so to speak?
Oh yeah, yeah. There's a probe heading out there soon, and in fact, another probe that'll be going out to Saturn's moon Titan, a robot helicopter. So,
Wow.
yeah, that is actually being built right now.
You don't hear about that stuff anymore.
Yeah, I don't know why. I guess space is starting to become commonplace again, and uh, yeah, we just don't hear much about it. I hope Elon Musk might do something about getting a sample return mission to Mars, because we have a robot on Mars that has been collecting and packaging all the samples.
Oh my.
And they've just canceled the sample return mission. So
Wow.
hopefully someone will go up there and bring those rocks that are being collected back.
But you do wonder about if Atlantis, the culture, was that far advanced, how advanced were they military, and not military, but medically?
Now there's an interesting thing, because a lot of the herbal culture is still advanced to this day. And it was with autoimmune diseases, until within the last 15 years or so, that kind of treatment really was the best treatment available. And I was born with a huge tongue twister called ankylosing spondylitis. And the standard treatment when I was getting very ill about 1985 was, oh, your immune system is hyperactive. We would like to give you full spectrum chemotherapy to knock down your immune system so that your immune system will stop attacking you. And by sheer coincidence, the kid I grew up with at the 4-H camp, Jesse Stoff, we wrote Darwin's Universe together, came up with all these theories that are just controversial at the time, now old hat,
Yeah.
came up with a lot of that together. And he went off out of origins of life biology off into medicine, and by coincidence happened to be studying the disease I had not yet been diagnosed with. And he said, I said, I'll let nature follow its course rather than deal with what little would be left of me. And I knew people who had been treated for that within a year or two tended to develop leukemia very rapidly. And Jesse said, I'm going to do some blood test. I think I can treat this. And he had remedies that he put together that he saw the royal family in Great Britain was using, some from Germany and some from China. And he said, let's try this. And they were available commercially, in fact. And in fact, when I sailed with Ballard, I hadn't gotten used yet to giving myself a shot in the leg. So the ship surgeon was giving me the shots. She's saying, "Want this?" And it's like, this is why I'm here. In July, they were giving me only a short autumn of life.
Yeah.
And Jesse saved me. And this is Jesse's stuff. I was out at sea only months later.
Oh, wow.
Feeling fine, where previously in July I had been awake only 4 hours a day. I was pretty bad off. And Jesse said, my job is to use these medicines until some of the biologicals that were being developed that you see advertised, Humira, Enbrel, things like that target that small pinpoint target, that part of the immune system that is too hyperactive, rather than rifle, two barrels at the whole immune system. Interestingly, getting back to archaeology, 2001, we're out doing forensic archaeology at the Titanic, running robots all in and around the Titanic. And one of the robots gets into the crew infirmary. And it's like, what are these jars that have roots and bits of plants in them? And what is that up in the corner? Recognize it. Oh my, that's a fermenter that it even had the designs, the blue and white designs for a Chinese fermenter. In fact, what we have in our own home. I was like, oh my, doctors Alauquin and Simpson were using Chinese herbal remedies in 1912. And
Wow.
considering that the treatments in first class for seasickness or a colicky baby or anything you had were okay, morphine, heroin, and cocaine. The people down in third class, the Lebanese passengers traveling in the forward bow of the ship, the people who worked the boilers, they had the best technology medicine that was available in 1912, where first class you had stuff that just might kill you or get you addicted to something.
Yeah. So also,
So, but
you
that's the kind of medicine that we're looking back to, that we have records of it in first century AD Rome and also in Greece. That, yeah, it's that kind of medicine. And by the first century, we had the Silk Road already operating. And more we know that. They just found a golden camel in the tomb system of the Terracotta Army in China, in Xi'an province. So we know the Silk Road was definitely going all the way east then.
what
There
about the
wasn't.
rusticals, though?
Oh, yeah, that's an amazing organism that grows near the hydrothermal vents, and there's a vent system, small vent system, not very far from the Titanic. So that's what colonized the hull of the Titanic. So that is looking like a good source that we need right when we're running out of new antibiotics. And one antibiotic that is showing promise for, while leaving the immune system intact, while being no more harmful than probably your average antibiotic, it works against cancer, because one of the things that the rustical colony or consortium, which we would say belong to the field of biology like a sponge, because it does have tissue layers, but it's built of bacterial and fungal cells. But one of the organisms that the consortium has to defend itself against down there in the deep is invasive amoebas. And they're nucleated cells, they're an analog of cancer cells. And we suspected that quite a while back. And now that the research is being begun again, we're
Wow.
looking into that a lot more, where going back to it, we're not going to try to patent anything. We're just going to publish in the peer-reviewed scientific literature and put it out to the world. Kind of like, we were talking about Omayeri a while ago. One person we know who was ahead of us on that in the sciences is Salk. He came up with the Salk vaccine for polio, and he didn't patent it. He said, this needs to go out to the world. It's the children that matter.
Yeah.
And so in his spirit, we're going to do this. We're doing the same thing.
Well, you look at Native Americans and their herbal cures for things. You look at, gosh, can't remember what her name was, but she was a Canadian, and Essiac tea. She was a nurse in Canada, I think, and she was changing somebody's dressing, and she noticed the lady had a scar, and she said, "What's this from?" And she said, "Oh, that's when I had cancer." And when she investigated it, she found that the woman had been given a tea by the Indian chief, and the cancer had gone away. And so she got the recipe and was treating cancer patients, was treating everybody with this tea that it's called Essiac now. That's her name backwards. And the cures were so good that the town gave her a house to use as a center, and it was all eventually closed down by the government, and they prevented her from distributing it, of course. But the Essiac tea is still available, and I know my husband had stage 4 lung cancer, and he literally was functional up to the day before he died. And a lot of it he attributed to the tea. So natural cures have really been cures. And I don't think I don't think science pays attention.
Yeah, and in fact, many of the treatments, they're things that are adapted from what's found in nature. So it's
Yeah.
many of the anti-cancer drugs, they're from things that have been found in nature, and it's just the ones that go full spectrum bombarding the immune system. I mean, I'm very lucky in my case that I knew Jesse, because otherwise there was nothing really that could be done. And he said, my job is to keep you alive until these other things, this new technology becomes available. And I'm here. I'm
Yeah.
always amazed that I'm here. I mean, some people, they get very depressed around the time of their birthday, and my birthday is, wow, how am I still here? Because I mean, I began with a very short expiration date. I did have cancer when I was 15 years old. And that tongue twister of a disease, ankylosing spondylitis, is probably what encapsulated the tumor in a bony material, and was my immune system was attacking it.
Wow.
And it's known that people with this genetic condition, there's a higher incidence of cancer, death in family members who do not develop ankylosing spondylitis. And so, there's a whole statistical study getting started now. One disease seems to treat the other. And so, if you can, with the genetic technology that's available now, is it possible that you can create ankylosing spondylitis, but just around where the tumors are, without attacking the joints and the skin and important organs and so on?
Wow.
So, which ankylosing spondylitis can do that. Most people, especially juvenile onset, do not live past much past the age of 45. But
Well, without you,
and yet the same disease probably saved my life back then.
yeah. Well, you certainly have been doing enough research that brings fascinating information into the public venue, which is so important. I want to go back to
just briefly, it's where the cancer, where you have the higher frequency of this ankylosing spondylitis gene, the cancer probably is one of the main things that activates it. It triggers it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's why it was thought people who get ankylosing spondylitis don't get cancer. And I was like, wait a minute, I did get cancer, but it went away. And that's not the only time we had that happen.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Well, it makes good sense that if you go back 1,000, even a million years, while the lifespan is probably shorter for obvious reasons, they were probably healthier until they died.
Yeah, I think the future is heading more toward, and you can see it just in the last 20 years, the difference between being 65 to 75 20 years ago to what it is now. You have people 65, 75 now who are going to the gym every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're smart, they're going to the gym every day or every other day. So it's not, things are heading now toward not just extending life, but extending the quality of life.
Absolutely.
And that's what I'm thankful for. It's where it's the quality of life that really matters.
I look at my family, and at my age, so many of them were already dead, or if they were still alive, they were not fully functional. And it's kind of like, ooh, I beat her, and I beat her, and I beat her. So it's kind of like, okay, there's got to be something going on, whether it's health. I don't know. There's got to be something going on.
And having purpose in life has a lot to do with it. A lot of what we're talking about now, by the way, it also goes back to things Plato was writing. We're talking about these things, and yet They're not new. They go all the way back.
But you make a
Plato
really
and
so
Pliny, they were, it's all about the quality of life, not how many years.
well, you got a point there, and I think one of the things that I'm finding with people as they get older, they lose their purpose, they lose their direction, they just quit. And I had a friend who was a scientist. And I mean, her name is on a lot of different things. She's patented tons of stuff. And when she retired, when she quit work, she just quit. And it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. She went from the sharpest tack in the pack to nothing.
I saw that happen in Grumman, where you're full on active. And years ago, I don't know if Northrop Grumman has the same policy, but you were required to retire at age 55.
Yeah.
And I knew some brilliant people who just did not know what to do with their time, and they started to fade mentally. You know, it's you're in a hotbed place like that where you're sending things to the moon and you're meeting with people every day, and then you're forced into retirement and you're not meeting people in the hallways every day talking about these things.
Right.
And the ones I know who did well were they never stopped. That's why retire me? No, I'm just going to die with my nose down in my last handwritten story I'm writing, or down in my keyboard. Nose
Well,
down. That's how Isaac Asimov said he was going to go. The ones I know who remained healthy and active throughout life, even with physical challenges, like
sure.
Arthur C. Clarke with post-polio syndrome, he was active till the very end.
Yeah, and I can think of several people that literally, kind of said to death, "Wait a minute, I want to finish this sentence, and then I'll go with you." I mean, it was kind of like not yet, and so I want to go
I
back.
could see mine last thing being, I've done it. I've done it. I've finally gotten how 12-dimensional space-time works the entire universe, including our consciousness as well. And here's the secret.
I suspect you would do that just to be mean.
No,
I
Harold
haven't
Urey
ready.
did something like that to me. He was writing me a letter about the origins of protocells, and I got a typed version of it from his secretary. And about a month later, she said, "I think this needs to be with you." And it was as his hand, he was signing it, and his hand ran off the page as he had a stroke. And
Wow. Well,
yeah.
I want to take us back to the Minoan. There is a Minoan city. I forget which island it's on, but it's got the ball court. It's got buildings. It's got
Yeah,
is that
that's Crete.
Crete?
No
Okay,
sense. Yes.
and
The showers, the storage reserves for grain, everything.
hot and cold running water.
Mm.
I mean, just having the plumbing for all of that and the knowledge of it. It's when you think about, then you look at coming forward into the 1800s, 1700s,
Yeah.
the chamber pots. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
I mean, our founding fathers, you could smell Philadelphia and Paris 6, 10 miles away.
I just
Yeah.
what happened that all of that knowledge just kind of went away? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know about Egypt. I don't think they had hot and cold running water. I don't know that they had running water.
We don't know enough about the homes, and not enough of that has been preserved and dug up. So we just don't really know what the average person lived like in Egypt. We
But
know some of the workers at the pyramids around Giza that at least the commanders of all the work, their lives weren't that tough. But the Egyptians probably, their homes were a lot like Minoan homes.
well,
Certainly at Avaris they were.
if you look at the Hanging Gardens of Hammurabi, they had literally pumps that would get the water to the top levels.
Yeah, with chains and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that there were people around that had those kind of minds. And
By the first century AD. And
so
going
what
back
happened?
much before that, second century BC, you had the Antikythera devices, plural. I mean, the one that was found on the ship was not the only one. You
Right.
had multiple gear shift devices for computing. Oh, when's the next eclipse going to be? Where are the planets going to be at this time? And it took until Switzerland was making multi-gear shift devices and clocks, and that China was doing the same thing to get up to that technology again. It was there. It was apparently all lost.
Was it Greece or was it Egypt that literally had a clock?
Couple of places probably had them. There's indications in writings of Greece, several kinds of clocks. They were all the water clocks and everything, but in order to try to figure out where your position was going laterally at sea, you needed a gear shift type clock that was working, and they were probably beginning to use those by about the first century.
But then, you hear what the scientists say about, where we are as far as development and everything. And then there was that fly that was in amber that goes back how many millions of years, that indicates that there was pollination, there were flowers, it takes everything back further. So, I mean,
that goes back about 90 million years. And in fact, some of those have been found in New Jersey, in amber deposits that are now under condominiums and overpasses.
Yeah.
And there's a lot being found in China. There's amber deposits there that go back just about as far as that.
So, and humans have been around. I mean, and it isn't just one, Erectus is here and then there's another. I mean, they kind of overlap. But it would seem to me that there should be.
Excuse me.
I do that too.
Watch Charlie. Is it time? Watch me choke on coffee.
I can choke on air given half a chance.
And here's the secret.
Don't do that to me. But you look at, is it that the living conditions were so good that the consciousness and the minds were able to go that extra level, or did humanity devolve in how difficult it was to live and to have food and stuff like that, so that their focus wasn't on other things, it was just on survival? Is that what happened?
Well, first off, the evolution, it's not just like ladders or people climbing uphill and evolving in one direction. Or at one point there were about 10 different types of humans living around. And in fact, the evidence suggests Neanderthals, Homo erectus, they were basically us. We're a very polymorphic species of very bushy evolution rather than just a straight up stem of a tree. Neanderthals and some of the others that were living around 40,000 years ago, they were probably just other races of people. Some maybe the thin-boned people, which are more like us, able to run faster, throw their spears faster, maybe even make better spears. High technology destroys, the high-tech people will destroy the lower tech people. when high tech meets low tech, high tech rapes low tech is basically what human history has been.
Well, I
And
know I had my DNA done a long time ago, and I have a very high percentage of Neanderthal.
hmm.
And I have always thought that that is why I'm as healthy as I am.
Yeah, there are some indications that Neanderthal genes, there are some things that might be a little disadvantageous, some things that might be very advantageous, maybe even a reason why a lot of people from Scotland can tolerate very cold water for a long time. Might be why, I've got a little bit of ancestry from Scotland. It might be why at Big Brook Creek in New Jersey in the winter I'd be working with fossils with my hands in cold water for hours, but my fingers not being numb. Uh,
Ah,
you have Charles Jowkin of the Titanic. He was from Scotland. He was floating around in the water longer than anyone else. And when they told him, you can come up on this overturned boat now because about 5 people have just died, there's room for you. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay. He's a medical mystery.
I was
So,
well,
but
but
Scottish
there,
people do have a strangely high tolerance for cold.
and there are tribes, if you call them, in Alaska that can withstand the cold um, better than me for sure. Because
And that's something that the Neanderthals had going for them was they adapted to very cold weather.
well, tell that to my feet because when my feet get cold, it's all over.
Uh,
But I look at all of the wonderful technology, and it's very clear how the Minoan art blended into other cultures, with the pottery and everything. But if you stop and think about it, if they had never been destroyed, where would we be today?
yeah. And if that civilization had lasted, linked as it was with the Egyptians, I mean, really, technology, it took a long time for technology to get back up to that level and then to go beyond it. By the time Rome started falling apart and China at the same time also started to fall apart, uh, we didn't see a return to that level of technology again until the 1700s.
But what
And we
happened?
even have accounts of gunpowder being used in the second century AD.
But what happened really was
Is that music or is there some sort of feedback going on?
no, that was my clock downstairs. It's
Oh, okay. I
um,
was hoping I wasn't causing feedback. So,
no, that I think what it appears to me that the larger a nation gets, the more inclined it is to empire build, and it takes everything else away from new technology into let's have bigger weapons, let's be able to conquer other places. And if you look at what happened, it's with Rome, it's with a lot of these countries, they began to empire build and they weren't as innovative as they might have been. I mean, you take though Michelangelo, who was, an amazing painter and an inventor, and then he was working on war things for war for
yeah.
the king. So, I mean, there's always going to be those people who are creative and can make life better. But if their talents are turned to war, then society doesn't benefit from it.
Mm. Yeah, there are many different things that lead. Uh, you can have a bad leader, as you had a couple times in Rome. Oh boy, the time of Elagabalus, he made Caligula look mellow. But fortunately, there were women around him who could run the empire and then eventually kill him, and then put in Severus Alexander, who was a genius
Yeah.
at 14. But you can have a period like that, and if there aren't many other things going wrong at the same time, a civilization might survive, but you really couldn't, they didn't have a margin of error in the time of Elagabalus and Severus Alexander. The economy was going bad. They were downgrading the money, downgrading silver content and everything. Everything was beginning to fall apart. And then you had a few diseases come in, crop failures, fractionization, and then you had emperors coming in after that who, what do I do? Oh, let me battle the Christians against the polytheists and get them all hating each other and killing each other in the city streets. And that'll distract from everything else that's going wrong. And you had 200 years of basically downsliding decay.
Well, the
And
library,
hopefully we can learn something from that and avoid doing it to the world today.
well, look at the Library of Alexandria. Oh,
Yeah.
if we had those records. I mean,
Well, not only Alexandria, there are very many big libraries. There was one in Turkey, there was one in Antioch, Syria. They were just as big. They were all destroyed, and we keep taking some of our best things and putting them in one place. I mean, what we lost in Dresden and Italy during World War II. I
well,
mean,
when they wrote the
yeah, a couple
Bible,
thousand years of civilization, just ash in the heavens.
well, when it was Constantine who wanted the Bible written, and once it was written, he destroyed all the other material that hadn't been used. I
Yeah,
mean,
he and his follow-on people, and then there were such wars uh, between. Yeah, there are many. Some of those banned in the Bible in the Constantine and post-Constantine era. Actually, some of those are preserved because in the 500s AD, 600s AD, you end up with some of those books actually going into the Quran. So
yeah,
you'll find the infancy gospel of Jesus in there. Mary, the mother of Jesus, is written about much more in the Quran than in the Bible, or at least around the time, yeah, later on editions. So, some of those are preserved there. We know where they came from because the Greeks preserved them and the Coptics in Egypt. And then there were the buried libraries that the Nag
that's
Hammadi library, which you're able to compare and say, oh, that's what the Egyptian church was preserving. That's what the Greek Orthodox Church was preserving on Mount Athos. So many of these books are still preserved and are still readable. The most interesting ones to me being there's one book that's just quotations of Jesus that are in the Gospel of Thomas.
mhm.
And some of them are very familiar, and some of them are not quite familiar, but a couple of those seem to go back about 400 years earlier. You kind of wonder if what Jesus and some of the other people were preaching at that time, as if there was the same thing being preached in different places around the world. You find them in Buddhist tradition too. It's a question, only a question, but were Jesus and some of these other reformers who we read about in the time of Jesus, were they bringing Eastern traditions into Roman tradition?
Trying
And
to, trying
you
to.
find the same things. He who lives by the sword shall die by the sword. He who lives by the knife shall die by the knife. Don't do unto another what you would not want them to do unto you. These same things. The emphasis that is on adopting, that's a whole other story, but that take into your home the orphans.
Oh yeah,
And
no,
there
it's
are indications in some of these gospels that Jesus adopted unto himself a son and called him his brother. What do you read that still survives at the table of the Last Supper? There was the twin, the brother of Jesus, called Didymus Judas Thomas, also called Judas not Iscariot. That's still in the Gospel of on the King James version of the Bible. It's still there. And under Roman law, that makes sense, because if you expected that you may be saying something that may honk off the wrong person and you may be executed for it, well, under Roman law, they had a quirk. Why would you adopt a child and call him your brother or call him the beloved disciple? Because the Romans, if they killed you, they would kill your children. They would kill your grandchildren. They would kill your wife. They would kill your lover. They let siblings survive. So when Caligula was killed, Claudius, Caligula's sister was spared. When they killed, in Roman history, they would kill the emperor, but they would allow the siblings to survive. Wives, very rarely did they allow them to survive. So, when I saw that, it all made a kind of sense to what we were seeing in the Talpiot tomb, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Where things were written in 3 different languages: Aramaic, in Latinized Aramaic, and Greek. There's actually a prayer in Greek. And these people in the chamber next door, there's a prayer in Greek referring to someone that they believe is or is going to or has risen up. It's right there in that language.
Is it in one of the ossuaries in the tomb? Was there reference to Jonah and the whale, and that was
yes,
that
it's
was in
that
Turin?
ossuary where there's an illustration that it's more fish-like than whale-like, but rising up a person. So
And that was symbolic of rebirth and regeneration.
it appears so. It appears so. So
And
it's,
yet,
I mean, that system of tombs, the whole volume of it would fit inside Molly Brown's stateroom on the Titanic.
yeah,
And it is still more mystifying and fascinating to me than the Titanic. And that's saying an awful lot.
yeah. So what's happened with the Talpiot tomb? Is it not available? Have they sealed it up again? What have they
It
done?
is sealed up. It is available to, like, NASA robotic exploration, sending in probes. I do think we have to be very careful about disturbing anything in there again, especially the one that's called the chamber that's called the patio tomb. It's pretty much intact and hasn't had people going all through it. So it's an ongoing study. There's certainly a microbiological study that needs to be continued.
I know that
New
James,
interpretation of symbols that are in the antechamber that need to be looked at and image enhanced so
and
that we have a clear idea what we're looking at.
this is in the area where Joseph of Arimathea had his gardens and his estate, right?
We think so. So also, people have greatly misinterpreted a lot. This in one of the apocryphal texts referring to Mary and to Thomas and Matthew attending they call it the going to sleep of Mary, the mother of Jesus. In one of those texts, it refers to a new family tomb where Matthew and Didymus Judas Thomas are buried. The media seemed to think, for some reason, way back in 2007, that we were saying that this tomb up in the Talpiot Hills is where Jesus was buried, and that it somehow defiled the memory of the holy place in Jerusalem and the original tomb. No, not at all. The place of a church of the Holy Sepulchre, that is where everything took place. But there are references to the Ark of the Cross, which is an ossuary,
Yeah.
that says that, oh, the holy cloths were put in there and pieces of the original cross. And apparently that's what it refers to, because the ossuary that is marked with 3 crosses and a star
Yeah.
and the name Jesus, Yeshua bar Yosef, Jesus, son of Joseph, it never had bones in it. There were never any bones in that ossuary, and we have all the layers of patina formation in there. There was nothing ever in that ossuary except wood that is consistent with Lebanese cedar
Yeah.
and cloths of 2 rather unusual compositions. And another interesting thing is that the inscription goes through a break in the ossuary. The ossuary is not decorated like even other ossuaries in the tomb that have rosette patterns and so on. It's just got hastily inscribed the 3 crosses, one attached to the beginning of the name Yeshua. It was a rejected ossuary. It was never finished because it was damaged. And part of the inscription goes through the damage. And that, when Simca and I were looking at that, and it was, oh my, it's in the Gospel of Thomas. It's also in Matthew. Show me the stone that the stone cutter rejected. That is my cornerstone. It resonates with the stories we read. Who was damaged? People like Peter, the people that Jesus chose, according to the accounts we're reading, were all in one way or another damaged or defective. Mary Magdalene, he had to chase demons out of her. It says nowhere that she was a prostitute, by the way, but
No.
he had to clear her of demons, which is often what they called a kind of mental illness. They thought mental illness was from demons. But these things, the ossuary, that if there were no other ossuary in that tomb, that one would still speak. In its own way, it would sing what we read in text and what we read in not only the Gospels, but also in other holy texts.
I found that book, and James Tabor also wrote a book about it as
Yes, and he's
well. He
written
was
several which are must reads. If you get into that topic, you must read it. I went into that topic expecting, okay, tell Elian she has a list of all the names on all the ossuaries. The ossuary culture lasted 80 years approximately. Okay, she's got basically a phone book. Let's do mathematics. How common are these names? How common would be this sequence of names? And I expected, okay, I've got the phone book. I'll put the names together. I'll do a little mathematics. I should be home by afternoon. That was 2004. I said, and the whole project, Simca agreed with me. It needs someone who's going to go into this as the devil's advocate, as close to atheist as anyone can be, and still call himself agnostic, which I still am.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm still going at it, because I said if I ever became religious, I'm not going at this subjectively. I don't even know if I would be objective without my subconscious mind dictating something to me that I'm not even aware of. I would recuse myself from it. I have to always be going at it, trying to explain it away. And when you have a lot of, well, I don't know what that is, how is that? What the hell is that? And it's been all these over 2 decades now of trying to explain it away and still being, I continue to be a failure at it. And it's a happy failure. It's like, wow, I'm
Absolutely.
still left with a mystery here. And it's so good to know that we're still in a time of mysteries. And I think we always will be. I think
I
science
hope
will
so.
always be fractal. Even when we've explored planets around other stars, I'd hate to live in a time when they all begin to look the same. And
Oh,
if there is a time when we do kind of know it all,
then
yeah,
what's
I
the,
would want to be there.
then there's no point to life.
Hmm. Hopefully, it'll be more like the Star Trek universe where they keep running into what the hell is that?
Yeah. No,
Just hope we don't find any giant cubes running after us.
I would hope so too. But I know the element of giants and little people, something I'm fascinated by, and I'm constantly researching. There are a lot of things out there that just don't make sense, and you kind of keep digging to see, what more can I find, and always there's something new,
Yeah,
always, and that to me is what is so exciting about finding potentially finding Atlantis. And it makes sense to say that it was Minoan-ish. That
mm,
even
yeah,
even even that on Centuria, the place where that estate is, whatever, with the ball court and everything, there were labyrinths within the
yeah,
building that's there. So a labyrinth is um, a logical thing to weave into a myth. And I'm beginning to look back at a lot of the myths and say, okay, so if this myth is really founded on fact, and if this myth is founded on fact, let's look at the travels of Hercules, the
mm,
challenges of Hercules. Knowing that biblically speaking, there were giants, there were monitors, there were all sorts of unusual creatures around, biblically speaking. Why could there not have been the foundations for a lot of these Greek odysseys and things like that? That they've lasted through time for a reason. And my thought is, the only reason they survived is because there's an element of truth within them.
yeah. I think they have found somewhere near Turkey some indications of people who grew up to about 8 feet tall. Uh, Humans are very variable. So, I
Yeah.
mean, even in America, we have people who are very, very tall, almost 7 feet tall, almost 8 feet tall. And unfortunately, they develop arthritic conditions in the knees and so on. One guy I talk about a lot, who I worked with many, many years together, one of the most brilliant minds on the planet was Jim Powell. We lost him in 2019, but you'll see I've co-authored a lot with him. He was out at Brookhaven, and sometimes, we'd see I'd get bullied by someone on Publishers Row or something, and he said, I said to him one day, I said, "Why does this happen?" And he said, "Yeah, I kind of watch. Yeah, you don't talk about things that normal people talk about." I said,
Yeah.
"Well, you talk about a lot of strange stuff too. You talk about the same things." And he said, "Yeah, but I'm 7 feet tall and I was on the football team and I had anger issues when I was young. So I was much more intimidating than you ever were."
Well, well.
But he had to duck under doors sometimes. And he
Well,
didn't have all he was well adapted. He didn't have all those health problems that most people who grow up to almost 7 feet tall have.
the Bible talks about the giants being very tall, red haired, fair skinned, six
Mm,
stitches on hands and feet, and double rows of
mm,
teeth. And that there have been giant bones discovered that were like this. But,
mm. And
but
including somewhere in Southwest United States where there were people who
Nevada,
were very tall that one or a couple of tribes finally gathered together and went after them. And
oh,
there were
yeah.
these traditions, and they've been finding the shoes and
Well,
the
that
skulls
was
and so on. And yeah, there was some pretty big people running around somewhere, just as in Africa you had people that were called the pygmies. And you also had tribes where the people grew very tall.
well.
There's
I
some
had a
advantages to being tall when you're going to uh, sling a spear at someone with, I forget what they call it, that piece of wood that's like a hook that hooks into the spear.
Oh,
The longer your arm reach, the faster and farther that thing is going to go.
yeah, but not when you're buying clothes.
No,
But
no.
I had somebody work with me on the show 20 years ago, and she was fair skinned, had red hair. And the more we got into all this, she said after one show, she said, I have to tell you, my family has red hair, fair skin. We all are born with 6 toes and 6 fingers, and we all have double rows of teeth.
Mm.
And I thought, isn't that fascinating? I
Freddie
said,
Mercury had the double row.
that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So, I think genetically it may have come down. It may be a part of us. So again, going back into what have been fantastic stories that we call fantasy may well be our way of preserving for a time a piece of history that we aren't ready to embrace again.
Oh no.
So it sends us all back to first the Greek and the Roman stuff, and then the Norse. And, it's sort of like, I think we don't know enough about our history to really put it in print as of yet.
You had mentioned things like all the libraries that were destroyed.
Yeah.
One place where after 535 AD, where institutions and libraries and technology and the idea of vitamin C and so on, herbal medicine, hygiene, all of that survived in Cordoba, Spain.
Ah.
And it's from there, really, that the Renaissance began to go out during the time and after the time of the Crusades.
Well, I think
And some of it was also preserved in Saudi Arabia also. So there are a few places where these things, little pockets where what was left of Roman technology did continue.
Well,
I'll tell you, Constantinople was really not one of them.
No. Well, there are Tibetan monasteries that actually have a written record that Jesus visited there at some point in time in his ministry. So, there's a lot of wonderful material out there. It's just that, like you said, it's hidden here, it's hidden there.
It's also written that Thomas, who was sometimes called the twin of Jesus, that he was sent to India. And it's one of the Apocrypha where he says to Jesus, he's afraid to go to India, to go there. And Jesus says, do not worry, do not be troubled. The way has been prepared for you. And interestingly, in the Acts on the passing of Mary, Thomas is described as coming to her deathbed from India.
Wow. There's so much good stuff out there.
Yeah.
There really is.
And there's so much that we don't know that is yet to be discovered.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I to the thought that it's all out there and it's all done scares me, and it's not. I just noticed we're way over time here, but
okay.
We do have a date. We do have a date for next Monday, and hopefully we will get that show under our belts as well.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, certainly there's subjects we can cover.
Okay. Thanks so much again.
Monday, I'll be back from having met with a bunch of people who were doing things in looking at the ancient Roman Empire and at ancient Greece. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I will catch up with you then. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot. See you later. Bye.